Well, the reports were right. Slaven Bilic has been today sacked by West Bromwich Albion, and his replacement looks set to be a very, very familiar name and face on the Premier League scene, and a very familiar face to both you and I. Hey guys, Fletch here, bringing you another Fletch Talks video, and this video is concerning the big breaking news story that head coach Slaven Bilic has today been sacked by West Bromwich Albion, and his replacement looks set to be a very familiar name in the name Sam Allardyce. Yeah, it seems to be a very repetitive story, this one. A manager who isn't exactly doing particularly well gets sacked around the Christmas or New Year period, and who's waiting in the wings ready to take over at that particular club? None other than connoisseur of pints of wine, connoisseur of all things that you can find in your local chip shop, managerial veteran, Premier League extraordinaire, Sam Allardyce. This news doesn't even come 24 hours following West Brom's draw with Manchester City. The Baggies drew 1-1 with Pep Guardiola's side last night. A point which seemed very unlikely on the face of it, an unlikely point gained by the Baggies, a result which may be a big point in the season of West Brom when all things are said and done at the end, and a result which many people were believing that may have bought Bilic a bit more time in an attempt to turn around the fortunes of the Baggies season so far during this campaign. However, it wasn't to be, and Bilic now leaves the club lying in 19th place in the table, having accumulated 7 points from their opening 13 games, and with a record that speaks one victory all season, just one victory all season, 3 draws and 8 losses overall so far. Reports began emerging last night that Slaven Bilic, despite the good result that they picked up against Manchester City, was set to be sacked anyway. And of course, fast forward to today, those reports have seemed to be true and came to fruition. Upon his dismissal, Albion did release a statement. They basically said that West Brom have today parted company with Slaven Bilic, along with a few members of his coaching staff. It went on to say that they would like to take the opportunity to thank Bilic and his coaching staff for helping the club achieve promotion from the Championship to the Premier League last season, and they wish them all the very best for the future. They concluded the statement by saying that they don't wish to make any further comment at this time. I think that's in regards to who his successor would be, but everyone seems to know that they are in negotiations with Sam Allardyce. Bilic, of course, took over in June of 2019. He took over West Brom in June of 2019. They were a championship side, of course, back then. And within his first season with the club, he managed to guide them to 2nd place in the championship table. And ultimately, that meant promotion. And let's face it, since then, it hasn't exactly gone to plan. Their return to the Premier League hasn't gone how they would have wanted it to, and hence why the big call was made for Bilic to be sacked and they part company with the Croatian entirely. But let's face it, and let's be realistic here, the Baggies' main goal this season was to survive in the Premier League, and they faced a massive uphill struggle to make that a reality. They faced a massive uphill struggle to survive, to keep their heads above water, to stay out of the relegation zone. And that is why many fans and pundits alike called them as favourites to be relegated back down to the Championship for this campaign. And on paper, when you look at their playing squad, it's easy to see why many people would put them in that category. Easily, they have one of the worst Premier League squads in the division right now. They, on paper, lack Premier League experience. They have not a very consistent goal threat, I'd say. It was a struggle for me when I was looking at their squad to see where the consistent amount of goals were going to be coming from this team. And when you look at the defence clearly had some big defensive frailties that you weren't sure if they would survive in the Premier League enough. Kind of evident All of those things kind of accumulated to why people were putting them as favourites to go down this season. And within the first 13 games of their season, all those things are kind of evident in their performances. And when you look over their performances anyway, apart from their one win against bottom of the table Sheffield United, like, their best performances have all come against teams that they definitely weren't expected to get anything out of. The ones that stand out in my mind are the games against Tottenham, Manchester United and Manchester City. Okay, they battled hard. They didn't get anything out of the Manchester United and Tottenham games, but they did battle and work very hard and were very unlucky not to have got anything out of. And, of course, last night's game against Manchester City, they actually did manage to accumulate a point and grind out a draw in that game. But it's their performances against the teams that are near and around them that you have to point the finger at and question. The likes of Crystal Palace, Newcastle and Fulham weren't the best performances, and obviously they were defeated in those games. And ultimately, those are the kind of games that, as relegation candidates, you need to be taking points from. When you face the quote-unquote bigger teams of the division, they're more seen as a free swing. So failure to accumulate the points in those lesser games, so to speak, or those seemingly lesser games because they're not as attractive because on the eye, but they mean a lot more because of where you are in the table. Not picking up points in those games certainly didn't help Bilic's case at all. Look, in my opinion, it's exactly how I said it. Albion were always going to be facing an uphill struggle to survive this season. No doubt in my mind about that. And the reason for that are for all the many reasons that I've said earlier in this video. But sticking with him may have helped more for a long-term plan for the club. And whenever a team gains promotion to the Premier League, but doesn't quite hit the ground running within the opening half of the Premier League season, I always compare them to Burnley of several years ago. You remember the story of Burnley of several years ago? They initially got promotion, they battled hard, they worked hard all season, but it wasn't enough to see them survive in England's top flight division, and they instantly got sent back down to the Championship. In Burnley's case, they stuck with Sean Dyche. They saw that they had overachieved, so to speak, to get to the Premier League initially, and they weren't too harsh on him that they sacked him. They basically gave him a second chance to redeem himself. And you look now, they instantly got back to the Premier League and are now becoming more and more of a Premier League fixture as the years go on. I know it's only one story, but it's always one that in these types of situations, I think teams should consider when considering their managerial options and their options for Premier League survival. But ultimately, it wasn't to be for Bilic. Ultimately, it wasn't to be. So, Bilic has been sacked, and now it's looking ever likely that a certain Mr. Sam Allardyce, formerly of many clubs including Bolton, Blackburn, Newcastle, and his last job, which was a couple of years ago in Everton, is set to take over at the Hawthorns. It's been reported that negotiations are currently ongoing between both parties, but it's looking ever likely and seemingly a matter of time before the news breaks that Allardyce will be the successor to Slaven Bilic and will be taking charge as manager of the Baggies. And it's expected that the deal will be done so soon that Allardyce's first game in charge will be the big West Midlands derby on Sunday when the Baggies take on Aston Villa. And look, we all know exactly what Sam Allardyce brings to the table. He brings with him a wealth of Premier League experience and a style of football which may not be easy on the eye, but you can't argue that over the years it has brought results for clubs and teams that are in need of Premier League survival. And of course, West Brom are one of those teams that are wanting exactly that right now. And maybe, just maybe, their chances of Premier League survival have been boosted a little more by this managerial appointment. Allardyce has been around the game and the Premier League for a very, very long time. He's a veteran of this. And let's face it, he's become a bit of a meme for this type of situation. Going to various clubs who are in need of results to survive within England's top tier division is exactly now what he is known for. There are some big games on the horizon for the Baggies as we head into this Christmas and New Year period. And of course, in January, the transfer window is set to open once again. And that brings with it plenty of opportunity for Sam Allardyce to tinker with his squad and get it set for a relegation battle, you'd think. And overall, you'd have to say that with this move, with this big move that is set to happen, West Brom have made their first move over their relegation rivals to attempt to survive in England's top tier division, and it's going to be a big move at that if it comes off. Is it a good move though? Simple answer from me is that in the short term, yes. In the long term, no. They are still one of the favourites still to go down this season despite this move, and as I said, their chances have slightly more increased. I'll give them that. Their chances of Premier League survival have slightly more increased if this is to obviously come to fruition. But in my opinion, he's not really a long-term solution manager. He's not really that long-term you're going to build something with there. He's more of a short-term survive and then see what your options are after. He comes in, he does the job he's set in to do, and then he leaves, which is why he gets a lot of attention around the midway point of the season for doing exactly what he's going to be doing right now. It won't be pretty by any means. It won't be pretty football. It won't be pretty in grinding out results. But he may, just may, be able to save the Baggies and keep them in the Premier League for at least another season. But of course, this is just one man's thoughts, one man's opinions, and one man's ramblings on this particular topic. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of Slaven Bilic being sacked by West Brom Albion? What do you make of the seemingly inevitable replacement that is Sam Allardyce? What do you make now of West Brom's season? Where do you think they'll end up under Sam Allardyce? Or is there going to be someone else? Because, I don't know, maybe there's going to be a hitch in this deal. Maybe Sam Allardyce doesn't take over. What are your thoughts on this entire deal as a whole? I'd love to read your thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, ramblings, whatever you want to call it, in the comment section below. I am so sure that they will make for interesting reading. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things will always be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will see and speak with you all again soon in another video.